Hello and welcome back to the Mumbles and Things YouTube channel. My name is Maggie if we haven't met before, still Maggie if we have met before, and on this channel I react to things that I see in the witchcraft community that I want to talk about, and I answer questions about witchcraft. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and hit the bell so that you are notified when I post new videos. Today's video is a little bit different from what I have posted in the past or talked about in the past, but it is something that I am interested in. I have been seeing a rise in this within the witchcraft and spirituality communities, and it felt like it was time to say where I stand and give some information about why I am anti-MLM. MLM stands for multi-level marketing. Let's just talk about it. Here's the thing. Now, before there was social media, witchcraft was a very small niche, and many people struggled to find other people who had similar beliefs to them. With the rise of internet and online accessibility, we have Facebook groups, we have subreddits, Discords, Twitter, Tumblr, YouTube. And so a lot of us are able to find community, we're able to find support and encouragement and friendships all around the world. And that's incredible. I have loved being able to connect with other witches instantly. At the same time, social media has also given rise to multi-level marketing. And so our safe spaces that we can gather in as witches have become breeding grounds for scams and exploitations, including recruitment into MLMs. As somebody who has been watching anti-MLM content for years, has considered herself, I've considered myself anti-MLM for years. What I have been observing in my spaces in the witchcraft community is that they're able to adapt to the language that we use and to take advantage of people in our communities. As I mentioned before, at one point it was hard for witches to find people to connect with, and having these spaces where we can come together and have this community where all we want is to have conversations about witchcraft and talk about what's going on in our lives, that space is being taken advantage of through the predatory practices of MLMs. And as I said, I haven't talked very much about anti-MLM before on the channel. It was a little bit off topic since I usually talk about witchcraft, but I have been seeing it growing and spreading within our spaces. And it feels like it is my responsibility to just use my platform to warn people about the manipulation and the toxic positivity and the victim blaming and the deception and the scams that are part of MLM culture, because they do use these practices to convince people in the spiritual new age and witchy communities to join their business. Let's talk about what MLM is. Multi-level marketing, MLM, sometimes it's called social selling, direct selling, which is not direct selling, network marketing. There's a bunch of different words that people use to describe it because there's sort of a stigma specifically around multi-level marketing as a term. It is a business model in which a company recruits distributors to sell the products directly to the public. There's a product, and instead of using traditional advertising methods and going into stores to sell the products, they recruit people to sell the products. And additionally, those people that they've recruited to distribute the products also recruit additional people to sell the products, and so on and so on. Now, instead of paying these people that are selling the products, the multi-level marketing company will promise them a payment when they sell the products. So they get a commission basically for selling a product, and they get like a bonus or a commission when they recruit other people to sell the product. So there's two ways that people get paid basically in an MLM. They'll say that there's like hundreds of ways, but there's two ways: selling a product, recruiting someone else. So that's generally how the business model works. Now, the Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC, the governing body that observes businesses and makes sure that they are ethical, has ruled that MLMs are legal pyramid schemes and that participants in MLMs should be aware of the risks involved with joining them. Despite the warnings from the FTC, MLMs continue to proliferate, and they often prey on vulnerable people in marginalized communities. So I do want to talk about what those risks are, what the FTC is warning people about when they join an MLM. in my opinion, most people who join an MLM don't actually believe in the product that they're selling, since the company usually requires that they do not talk about other products. They have to go all in 100% for a product. And maybe they do believe in the product, maybe they think it is a miracle and that they couldn't live without it. Even so, only being able to talk about one thing that you use and only being able to buy from one company, that seems really inauthentic to me. The next danger of joining an MLM is that there's usually an expensive monthly fee. Sometimes it's not super expensive. It really depends on your definition of what expensive is, but you have to pay monthly or sometimes yearly, depends on the company. And if there's not a monthly fee, there's a requirement to buy a certain amount of products, whether that's a certain number of purchases or a certain dollar amount that you have to buy each month in order to maintain your rank to earn your commission. So because of this, most people actually lose money when they join. You pay the initial starter kit to get started in your business, and then if you can't sell anything, you've lost money. Or you pay your monthly fee, and if you haven't sold anything, you've only bought products in order to maintain your rank, you've lost money. And according to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, again, only 1% of people who join an MLM actually make a profit. So that's not to say that the 99% of people aren't selling products or they're not recruiting people or they're not moving up in the levels. But that's just to say that they're spending more money than they're earning. So the statistic again is that 1% of people who join an MLM make a profit, make more money than they paid. I want to be really clear about this statistic because it is something that people get twisted all the time. This is not 1% chance of getting rich. This is a 1% chance of not losing money. So again, an MLM is a pyramid scheme. It's a legal pyramid scheme. Oftentimes people in an MLM, you'll hear them say that every business is a pyramid shape, that the CEO is at the top making the most money, and then there's all these people in the middle who are like managers, and then you have the workers on the bottom, and each level people make less money. And while that is accurate, that there is a triangular hierarchy within most business structures, the reason that something is classified as a pyramid scheme is not the shape. It is more about the direction that the money is flowing in. So in a traditional business, the money is distributed from the top and then it goes to the bottom. And I don't want to say it trickles down, but that's kind of what happens, that the company earns a certain amount of money from the customers who are outside of the business. And then the company takes that money and uses it to pay the people who make the business work. So they pay vice presidents, the managers, the employees. Everybody who works gets paid for the time that they work there. Additionally, with the traditional business model, the pay of the person involved in this level, I guess, of this business structure is dependent on the amount of risk that that person takes on and the amount of responsibility that that person has. It also depends on their experience, their skill, and their knowledge, what they know. The point is that everybody who works at that traditional business is paid for their time. But if you look at the MLM side of this diagram, this is a closed system in which the distributors are the customers. So the money comes in from the bottom and is filtered up. So as the mark either buys a product pack to start their business or purchases the product for personal use, the people above them, the upline of those people, get a commission on that. And the upline above them gets a commission on that, all the way up to the CEO of that MLM. So in this MLM business model, you are rewarded with bonuses and gifts when you recruit your own competitors, people who are also going to be selling the same product as you. Because of this, your income is dependent on the failure of those you recruit. Because as your market becomes saturated with other salespeople, you can't really sell as much, so you have to recruit more people in order to still continue to make money. Additionally, the MLM offers no base pay. So you can work 24/7 and not be guaranteed any payment for that time or that energy or the resources that you put in. And like I said before, the MLM actually requires you to pay them for the working. So you have to pay for your starter kit in order to start working, and you have to pay for either your monthly membership fee or your monthly purchase volume in order to qualify to earn the commissions that you are due. So now let's talk about the tactics that are used by the MLM. We've talked about this business model on its own is flawed for all the reasons that I've mentioned. And since the MLM incentivizes people to recruit others into the business so that they can also sell products, many of them have developed really predatory and toxic practices for recruitment and for keeping people in. And I know that it is contentious to call MLMs predatory and to use words like vulnerable and victim to describe the people who join. So I do want to be clear about what I mean by these terms. It is my belief that MLMs are commercial cults. They can be classified as a commercial cult, meaning that they exhibit behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. These phrases come from the BITE model, which is developed by Stephen Hassan, who is a cult expert. And I have seen enough anti-MLM content, I have seen enough pro-MLM content to have observed all of these different characteristics of cult practices. And since it is my belief that an MLM is a commercial cult, that means that the majority of the people who are recruited into that commercial cult are victims of the business model. And to be honest, we're all victims of the late-stage capitalist hellscape that we are all trying to navigate. So in my opinion, there are some in the cult, in the MLM, who are completely aware of what they're doing. But I think the vast majority of people involved in the MLM have been subject to undue influence, and they act in ways that they wouldn't necessarily act if they were not in an MLM. These words, they are triggering, the idea of being a predator or being a victim, but it's not really about the person. The person who recruits somebody else into their downline isn't a predator, but they often use predatory practices. And so separating yourself from your actions can be helpful in discovering what's really going on here. Let's talk about what these predatory practices are. One thing that I notice in particular, especially in relation to the witchcraft, is something I've alluded to throughout this video, is that MLMs prey on our desire to connect with other people, and just as humans, a need to build community, find other people who we can share our lives with. So the thing that I've noticed, and like I said before, they'll kind of enter these spaces where community is being built and say that they have a place where you can find this community. They'll shower someone that they wish to recruit with love and affection. This is a tactic called love bombing in the context of a cult, and it is a form of emotional control. So they'll use images of like sisterhood and support to entice people to join, because you're going to find all of these friends who you can talk to and hang out with and have so much fun with. Often, once you've joined though, the affection dries up. It might still be there in a way, but for the most part, once you're in, that's when they start the financial exploitation, trying to drain you of every dime you have. Now, people are also encouraged to block or ignore anyone who says anything negative about their company or the industry. I don't imagine that I will be blocked anytime soon. I'm not a very big channel on YouTube, so I doubt very many people will see this video, but I have seen it happen with larger anti-MLM commentators, that as soon as they gain traction making this kind of content, the uplines, the people who are higher up in the company, will have like a list of people you should block and not listen to. So this is an example of information control, where the information that they want the people within the MLM to have only comes from the MLM, and they don't want you to listen to somebody who has a different viewpoint. Additionally, they'll label people who speak out against MLMs as haters or negative or bitter or jealous or stupid, all of these different ways to attack a person rather than the words that they're saying. And that's usually because they don't really have anything to say in the face of the statistics that are given in the anti-MLM movement from the FTC and from other studies like AARP. Anyway, labeling outsiders and insiders, this is a form of thought control. You can also see that there is just an incredible number of trainings that most people are required to attend or expected to attend. So this is an example of behavior control. Now, I base this off of the many team leaders that I have observed telling their downlines that
attendance proves that they are committed to their business and that it will help them to be more successful in their business if they just attend one more training.
So again, that's the behavior control aspect of the commercial cult, controlling when you work, what you do. In some cases, it's not necessarily required, but you start to see that people in the downline begin to mimic or dress like the people in their upline. And in particular, the power hours that you'll see in a lot of MLMs where they are given tasks to do for a full hour.
Do this, do this, do this, and that's going to help you to be successful.
And they call it accountability. This is a legitimate practice or legitimate thing to do to hold yourself accountable to doing the things that you want to do, is to have someone else there to remind you of that. But I have seen in specific trainings where it looks more like the upline is trying to control the downline and making sure that they're watching, like a prison guard watching over the inmates. So again, those are just a few examples. Now, I also wanted to speak specifically about the way that an MLM will manipulate their language depending on the audience. Now, it's normal for a business to use a language for their advertising that will attract their target market. A company like the Witch's Moon, they have 3 different box subscriptions for different levels of what you want to pay. And I get their Roots box, which is like a focus on the herbs. And they are targeting witches. They're not trying to market to people who are not witches. So you get what I mean. There's companies that build their business around audience that they're trying to reach, and they use their marketing language to talk to those people. But with an MLM, their goal is to target everyone and anyone. Nobody is off limits. I have seen high fashion women and new age women use completely different language to sell the same MLM products to people in their circles. It's not to say that people only fit in their box, but what I'm talking about is that it's the same product and they're using different language to describe it in order to attract the people in their circles. Another tactic used by MLMs and the people within MLMs to recruit and encourage people to stay is victim blaming, where the upline will convince their downline that the reason that they haven't found success in their business is because their mindset is wrong. There's no amount of mindset that will help somebody move up in an MLM, especially an MLM that has been around for a really long time. The key to success in an MLM is being one of the first people to join, or having a good downline in another company and being paid to move over to a new company. And so telling somebody who's joined a company that the reason that they aren't making money and they're not able to recruit people is because they didn't believe in themselves is unethical. Now, because the upline depends on the downline financially, they don't want the downline to give up or quit. They also don't want the downline to realize that it's an issue with this business structure. So therefore, any problem that the business is having is the fault of the downline. And again, not a fault of the business structure. And it's all coming to us through this lens of toxic positivity. I don't believe positivity is toxic on its own. I personally try to maintain an optimistic outlook through gratitude practices and, playing my own version of the glad game from Pollyanna. But positivity becomes toxic when there is no tolerance for any sort of complaining or pointing out of issues. This is a form of gaslighting, telling people not to believe their own experiences and telling people that their experiences are inaccurate and that they just need to look at the bright side. And this does happen consistently within MLMs. And that is because if an upline is truthful about how they became successful, that they recruited the most people, they would reveal the pyramid scheme, that the majority of their money came from recruiting and not from selling the product. Instead, they stick with the lie that
I'm rich and you aren't yet, and it's because I'm more positive, more consistent, and I believe in myself more. So if you fix your mindset, you'll be rich too.
I recently read a book called Bright-Sided. It was recommended to me from the channel Savvy Writes Books. She did a great review on it that I will link in the description. And it was really eye-opening about how toxic positivity is prevalent in so much of American culture. But it was really fascinating, and it helps me to recognize the way that my personal beliefs surrounding witchcraft and surrounding the law of attraction have been warped by toxic positivity. So I highly recommend it if you haven't read it already. Let me know if you have read it, because again, it's really good and I want to talk about it with somebody who's read it. So yeah, let me know, or read it and come back and tell me what you thought. But now let's talk about what it means to be anti-MLM. What is anti-MLM? It is basically a movement that believes in the abolition of the MLM, multi-level marketing business structure. It is a grassroots effort made up of mostly consumers, former distributors, and activists who have seen the negative effects of MLMs on individuals and on communities. So again, I am anti-MLM. I have observed for years the harm it has caused people that I know, communities that I love. It was the essential oil MLMs, doTERRA and Young Living that introduced me to the world of MLM and anti-MLM back in 2014. Back then, there weren't that many commentators on multi-level marketing or network marketing or social selling or direct selling, whatever the kids are calling it these days. They change it in order to get away from the stigma of the word MLM. Anyway, I was new to witchcraft in 2014, new to like calling myself a witch, I guess. And there was a woman at my parents' church who was helping my grandmother manage her pain, and she used doTERRA oils. And it did intrigue me as somebody who was learning about the magical and medicinal quality of plants. I was interested in how these oils worked. Now, my grandma, she did say that the essential oils helped her pain. She had arthritis in her hands, and it was sometimes too much for her to even like hold something, to hold her cup of coffee, which she loved coffee. And so that was detrimental to her health to not be able to hold her cup of coffee. And I do think that they probably helped her in a way. In my opinion, I believe that what helped her more than the actual oils, the medicinal property of the oils, was the fact that this woman was massaging my grandmother's hands and caring for her and showing her love. So I do think that this distributor truly cared about my grandma and wanted to help her and wanted her to not feel in pain all the time. But I think she also got caught up in the marketing and the lie that this oil, doTERRA, was superior to any other oil, or Young Living has the same idea that Young Living oils are the best. Now, the oils are really expensive. If you've never tried to purchase a doTERRA oil or a Young Living oil, they're super expensive, and it was a little bit too much to buy that so frequently. I mean, my grandma would go through so many, and I was interested in it too. I wanted to buy these oils for myself. So I started researching other brands, and I discovered that really the only reason that these oils, the doTERRA and the Young Living oils, were so expensive was so that the company could pay the distributors their recruitment and sales bonuses. Those payments were added on to the cost of the oil so the company could still have the profit from, selling the product. So basically the consumer of the product is paying the distributor rather than the company is paying the distributor. And that again goes back to the model I showed you earlier, where the money is funneling up instead of down. Additionally, I learned that those companies didn't share their third-party testing publicly. So these oils, in order to prove there's no added ingredients to the oils, many companies will release a testing that is done by a third party who has no vested interest in whether or not the oil is pure. And doTERRA and Young Living didn't do this at the time. I have no idea if they do it now. I'm anti-MLM, so I don't buy them regardless. But companies like my favorite, Eden's Garden, or Mountain Rose, I also enjoy that company, Plant Therapy. These three companies and many other non-MLM companies have third-party testing results available for almost all of their oils. There has been some evidence that at least Young Living had added artificial ingredients to at least their cinnamon oil. I don't remember all the details. I think Savannah Marie has a video about it. If I find it, I'll link that below as well. So there was at some point added ingredients to the oils. So that kind of turned me off it as well, that they're claiming that they're these like therapeutic grade, the highest quality oils, but then they're adding artificial ingredients to it. And then I also learned that terms like therapeutic grade are basically meaningless. It has no real meaning. It's a marketing term that they use to make it seem like their oils are better. All of this together was like, why would I buy those expensive oils when I can get these ones that are seemingly better for cheaper? And at the time, I didn't really recognize or know how terrible MLMs were in terms of the victim blaming, the toxic positivity, and all the things that I mentioned before, how people lose money in them. But in 2020, with the panini, I started to notice a rise in MLMs in our spaces, in the spiritual and witchy spaces that I hang out with, and I began watching anti-MLM content. more regularly. I started following along with what these companies are doing, what the distributors are saying, and that helped me to understand a little bit better. Now, on one final note, a lot of people in MLMs will tell you that anti-MLM commentators are anti-woman, anti-community, anti-small business. And I just want to tell you that MLMs are anti those things. And being anti, this is confusing with all these anti-pro. Basically, it is my belief that avoiding purchasing from MLMs is actually pro-woman, it's pro your community, and it's pro-small business. Starting with small business, joining an MLM doesn't make you a small business owner, it makes you a contracted employee of another larger company. Saying that you're a small business is actually detracting from real small businesses that actually do need the support of their community. One thing that I've been noticing a lot, and I was actually watching the premiere of Savvy Writes Books video yesterday about somebody who's been harassing anti-MLM commentators. Somebody in the live chat was saying that they had stopped going to craft fairs to sell their crafts because they had been infiltrated by MLMs, that people in MLMs were buying booths, and that the craft fair was basically not even small businesses anymore, even though it labeled itself as small business crafts. So that's just one small example, but I've seen that happen a lot. I've been to different craft fairs. There was a New Age craft fair somewhere in Oregon. I went to a craft fair with my good friend. We were both just starting to get into essential oils, and he was really interested in holistic healing. So we went to this craft fair together. So many of the booths were doTERRA, Young Living, supplement, protein shakes and wellness and all of that. And there weren't that many candle makers or crystal sellers and people who were actually selling their services and were actually small businesses. Anyway, that's a long tangent, but basically, if you ask me, if you're in an MLM, you don't own a business, you're a contracted employee. If you own a business, you can set the prices of your product, you can decide when you have sales, decide how you can market your product, what you can say. But in an MLM, somebody else is deciding on the prices. They're telling you when the sales are. They're telling you marketing to use and what language to use. So what you can't say. They don't always stand by their compliance agreements, because there's a lot of examples of people who are racist and they allow those people to continue selling. Another tangent. Maybe we'll talk about that someday. Now, another thing that people in MLMs will say is that if you're anti-MLM, then you're anti-woman. And I would argue that anti-MLM is actually pro-woman because of all the harm that can be done by being in an MLM. Not only financial, as we talked about with the FTC warnings, but also emotionally through the abuse that is done to keep people in. The victim blaming and the toxic positivity that we've talked about, that can have a huge effect on your mental health. To be constantly told that you're not believing hard enough or you're not working hard enough, and you've been putting in everything you have and you're still not seeing the success that you think you should have. So to me, that is anti-woman. Additionally, most of the CEOs of these companies, these MLM companies, are men. And the women are the people who are working the business and selling the products and recruiting people and making money that funnels up to those men who are CEOs. So it's just another example of women doing the work and men getting the credit. That's just my 2 cents on whether anti-MLM is anti-woman or anti-small business. It is not. Anti-MLM is pro-women and pro-small business. Anti-MLM is pro-people is a better thing to say, because MLMs harm people of all genders. For the most part, it tends to be women who are recruited into the MLM, so that's why it's often talked about in terms of women, but there are men who join, and it's just as harmful to them as it is to the women. I know this is a different video than I do. I am still trying to figure out what I want to do with this channel. Basically, I'm just kind of talking about what I want to talk about when I want to talk, and I hope that that is interesting to you all. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Let me know that this is interesting to you. Leave a comment about your thoughts on MLMs, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.